host, Sophia Molinari.
I'm your co-host, Emmy Key.
And I'm your co-host, Chelsea Balot.
And welcome to the Getting Into Good Trouble podcast, where we make it our mission to challenge, question, and inspire you to do the same.
Today we're going to be talking about a trainee doctor who was raped and murdered in India. Chelsea, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, so going into this case, this has happened to many women, but in this particular case, this was like the turning point.
This has been an issue across India for a pretty long time, that women are being sexualized at work. They are being targeted by coworkers too. And nothing has been done, nothing has been really changed until now.
The case of Dr. Debanath has really just been a turning point for everyone.
It got doctors and citizens going on strike, joining protests because how much they care about this.
Yeah, and actually there was 75% of doctors that reported getting assaulted while working.
They did a study in 2022 and reported 90 cases a day.
The citizens believe that they need a change and that there needs to be something done about this. So some context leading up to this. Do you want to talk about that, Emmy?
Yeah, so Dr. Debanath was on a 32-hour shift when she went into the seminar hall just to take a rest and have a little break, and she found in the seminar hall one of the volunteer police.
So while she was sleeping, this police officer attacked her and sexually assaulted her and then ended up murdering her. And we know this from the autopsy. They performed an autopsy to see what happened, and it showed that she fought back.
And she was found the next morning just laying there lifeless in the seminar hall.
Were there any protests that arose from this situation?
Yeah, there were a bunch of protests that came from this issue, but one of the major ones was Reclaim the Night. Emmy, do you want to talk a little bit about what Reclaim the Night was?
Feminist groups organized this protest called Reclaim the Night, and it was a bunch of people kind of came together and started making marches demanding medical, they wanted women doctors to be safe in their hospital. This took place in Kolkata.
So they wanted the government to make a change. They wanted the doctors to be more safe in their workplace. They didn't want to have the doctors to have to worry about being safe while they're at work or while they're resting, wondering if they're going to live.
I actually do have a question. Do you guys know if, the people got in trouble for protesting?
Yeah, so actually the government did not get mad at the people for protesting as long as they kept it peaceful.
Yeah, so it was men and women that were part of this protest, and this wasn't the first time in India that this kind of case had happened, but because of how fast this case was growing and how big this protest got, this really was a big step forward for women's safety in India.
Do you guys know what happened to the perpetrator?
Yeah, so this case went through court super, super quickly because of all the protests that arose and everything, the need for change. And he ended up getting life in prison and up to the death penalty. And this is still ongoing. So the news is still coming out with new information on what's happening. One of the main points was that the perpetrator was a police officer.
Yeah, so doctors all over the world are really annoyed by the fact that he was there to protect her and he did the opposite.
We interviewed Ms. Shalu Yadav, and here are some of her insights on this protest.
My name is Shalu Yadav. I've been a journalist for 15 years now. 12 years of that have been with the BBC as South Asia producer, bilingual correspondent. I was also in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago as a news editor at their Washington bureau. And how am I involved with this news? Well, human rights and women rights has been one of the topics that really have drawn me through my career. As a woman, I really care about these issues. So I covered this for many months that the trial was on in India. As a woman, it's hard not to be affected by something like this. When you have so many rape cases, you pick up any newspaper in India, and I bet you'll find at least one headline every day that talks about sexual harassment, women's safety or lack of it. and rapes. So as a woman growing up in India, you are affected by these things. I mean, when I go to these protests and I cover this issue, the energy there, the anger that comes out in the streets, especially by the women, it's hard not to be affected by that.
We asked her what the main takeaways the protesters wanted and how it raised awareness for them.
For this case, you should definitely know about the conditions in which doctors work in India, especially female doctors. I mean, it's the most populous country in the world, and for every thousands of people you have probably one doctor. And this is a metro city we're talking about, where the availability of doctors is far better than in rural areas. So the protesters, mostly there were doctors, there was junior doctors. Initially, it was the interns who, start their careers at these hospitals, doing internships, and they end up doing very long shifts. Often they run from 16 to 20 hours, and that includes night shifts. Now, night shifts, as a woman, stepping out, in the streets in the night, it's a risk. But this incident, the rape and murder of this young doctor, happened inside the hospital. So that raised a lot of questions about, the safety of female doctors who were on duty. So they started raising demands like there should be CCTV on hospital campus, in this particular incident. And then they asked for very basic things. I was really surprised, when I delved deep into what their demands were. They were asking for separate washrooms. I mean, they didn't have separate toilets, to go and relieve themselves. They had to share that with the male. And so, they were very uncomfortable about that. And so I found out that, it was one of the most prestigious hospitals in India. And if the conditions are like that in that hospital, naturally it, evoked the same kind of reactions in other hospitals in India. So then you had doctors in Delhi, who rose up in protest. The Indian Medical Association, the doctors associated with them, also came out in the streets. And then before you knew it, it became a nationwide protest, mostly. And they demand.
Why do you think so many people wanted to join the protest?
I don't know if you remember, you might be too young So in 2012, when I was growing up as a woman like you girls, there was this very horrific case of rape that happened with a woman on a moving bus in Delhi. She was traveling in the night and she was raped on the bus by these four men, and she died of the injuries. This case kind of reminded people of that incident because of the brutality of how this act was committed, and how she was violated, and there were multiple injuries on her body, and she sort of later succumbed. So I think people, their conscience was sort of shaken by this incident.
Thank you so much for your time. Our interview with Ms. Shali Yadav gave us a lot more insight into the protest than what is on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, most of what she said I didn't even know about. It was really cool to be able to kind of hear her and understand her side of the story better. Everyone's perspective on this case was different, so it was really great hearing about her perspective since she was working on the case.
Thank you for tuning in to the Getting Into Good Trouble podcast. We hope to see you next time.